I am Donika.
And I am Myra, and this is a Black Women Healing Podcast.
A space to discuss mental wellness.
A space to dive into soul care and vulnerability.
Here, we will support you on your journey as you focus on your healing,
while also giving you the work along the way.
Welcome to Black Women Healing Podcast. I am here to announce that our book, Let's Heal, a workbook designed for Black women with various modalities by your co-hosts Donika and Myra, is now at a storefront. And so the storefront is Urbana Goods. It's a community store that brings an upgraded experience of connecting with the community with small crafting gatherings and workshops and supporting other local businesses by housing and selling their merchandise, such as us. And they even sell some of your typical items from the local convenience store. Like, y'all, I literally bought some body butter, hair products, and a cute purse all from this store, just to give you a little example. So when you have some time, check out Urbana Goods. It's located in Gardena, California. The actual address is 1756 West El Segundo, Gardena, California, 90249. You can put it in your GPS, whatever you need to do, but go ahead and make your way there and check us out. Hey, y'all, we're back with another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. And yeah, I feel like, we've been having some exciting guests, and today's guest is just going to be as exciting as the others. But before we start, let's start off with a quote, and we'll kind of reflect on that quote. So, okay, so let's say I'm going to use this one. There's always something to suggest that you'll never be who you want it to be. Your choice is to take it or keep on moving. And this quote is by Phylicia Rashad. What do y'all think about that quote? And I can read it over if needed.
Yeah, read that one more time.
There's always something to suggest that you'll never be who you want it to be. Your choice is to take it or keep on moving.
I think it just, for me, says that you may come across people who may not like your character or feel like there are things that you can do differently, and that may not always be how you want to exist. And that's okay. It's okay to just be who you are. That's something that I got out of it. Like, just always feeling okay with being who you are.
Let's see. I think I got out of that. What I heard was there's always going to be the possibility that you could have been different, right? Or that you could have been somebody else. And that there's no changing that. So either accepting that, like radically accepting that, kind of being miserable, like staying in that thought or that cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the language on that you'll never be who you want it to be kind of makes it like, oh, but I'm guessing too, kind of like what you all are saying, who you want to be hopefully lines up with how you continue to show up if you do take it or keep moving. If you choose to accept it or if you change it, then that is who you want to be. So it really doesn't matter. And when it says something about suggestions, I agree. Whether that's yourself, the world, the different environments around you that suggest that this is not it's who you want it to be or whatever. I think that happens all the time. So then it is a choice of, it could be something as simple as, you realize that you curse a lot or something, and then you either accept it or you change it, and then that is technically who you're wanting to be. So shout out to Phylicia Rashad and this is the sisters, right? This is the Debbie Allen. Is that who this is?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they in their own lanes. So this is the Phylicia Rashad.
Okay, that's right. But okay, we're about to get started.
All right, y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest, one of my dear and close friends, Monica. Monica is a San Diego native who identifies as Black, queer, polyamorous woman. In addition, she is a sister, a daughter, an auntie, and a therapist. So short, sweet, and straight to the point, just like Monica. I was gonna add in that you're a vegan sometimes, vegetarian sometimes, flexitarian sometimes, depending on the day.
I know it switches up, but I appreciate you for accommodating what it is.
So for us to even jump in, can you define for our audience poly relationships so that way they have an understanding?
Sure. So I guess most general or kind of breakdown is a polyamorous relationship or polyamory is the practice or the desire to have more than one intimate partner at the same time with the consent and knowledge from each party. That's overall what that is.
Thank you for making that brief and straight to the point. I'm curious if you have any literature that would be helpful for someone wanting to explore a poly relationship, specifically Black folks.
Specifically Black folks. I gotta look over that one a little bit more, but I have the couple of books that I think are really, really helpful in terms of finding definitions. Can be this book called More Than Two, and then another book called Polysecure. Can you see it already? If you look it up, Polysecure basically kind of maps out like attachment styles that come with the people who come with folks who want to explore polyamory, and looks at like just how your relationship, how you connect to people in general. So those are the 2 books that come to mind for me.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for asking that question. You know, we love some books, and to hear the books that are surrounding this topic for sure is helpful. So what are some initial ways that you explored and started to experience poly relationships? And to kind of piggyback on that, was it like a smooth and or difficult transition for you?
Let's see. The way I chose to explore it was interesting because I guess kind of became aware that I was polyamorous from a very early age. Just didn't have the language for it. So the way that I started to explore was maybe in high school with my first girlfriend. We kind of knew that we had different crushes on people, and so we had just conversation around like, oh, if you want to hang out with that guy you have a crush on, that's totally fine. We didn't know that what we were doing fell under this category of polyamory. So I guess from like our young perspective, that was the way that we started to explore, was just making that aware to both of us that we're seeing other people. Later on, when I got some more language around it, I started exploring a triad. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that, but it's when myself, another person, and another party, so 3 people are all in one relationship. That was another form of polyamory I practiced for maybe over a year. It was cool, but not my preference to have a triad.
What's the difference? I'm sorry, as you're talking about this, I guess I'm wondering, like, because you're talking about different forms. So a triad relationship is still a poly relationship. It's just one form of them.
Yeah, just one form. So, so for example, so there's a type of polyamory called polyfidelity, which is when multiple partners are agreeing to have a closed relationship, right? So there can be 1, 2, or 3 parties or more, but you're making the conscious decision to not explore outside of who's already a part of that space, right? So if there's 3 of us, we're not inviting any more folks to the party, basically, right? So that is one form of polyamory that I explored before. Over time, I kind of like the feeling of being able to have, more than one partner that don't have to coexist in that same space, right? So if I had maybe a triad situation, I was still allowed to go see other folks that didn't need to be a part of that dynamic. Does that make sense?
Like with the polyfidelity, you're saying that the people that you decide to enjoy in the relationship or have a relationship is only them.
Yeah,
like
it's just them. Yeah.
But a triad is 3, but you also can continue to explore.
So the triad one, that one still was closed, which so I didn't prefer that. I like to just be in relationships with whoever I want to be in a relationship with, whether or not they're a part of that little
or not.
Or not. Yeah.
Okay. Just thinking of that though, because you mentioned that because you were saying that some initial ways you started to explore, and so for you in this triad relationship, you were saying that you felt like that wasn't that wasn't the most.
Yeah, that wasn't my favorite style of polyamory only because, again, I liked to be able to connect with who I was connecting with. So I dated a woman and another man, and we were all in one relationship with each other. And, that was their preference too, was to just keep it amongst us three, which is a beautiful form. It works for a lot of folks. But I found myself wanting to connect and experience other people. And of course, just wanting to be respectful of people's preferences. Yeah, that was something that was hard for me to keep up with as far and honor myself, right?
Yeah.
So that's what made it kind of difficult for me.
Yeah. And exploring that too. I mean, it sounds like that. I mean, you had to be open to exploring it, to figuring out that wasn't your way. So what way, right? Since you're talking about these other forms, what way do you currently like identify with?
So and I actually have my little note section because polyamory is complex. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. All right, great. So I guess the best way I can kind of identify myself is like a non-hierarchical polyamorous person. So I don't place any of my relationships above the other, right? So most folks will say that they either have primary partnerships and secondary partnerships, which again works for some. It just implies that there's going to be someone who's always just a little bit more prioritized over the other. Whereas for me, I see all of my relationships, if I'm in one, as important. They might be different in terms of what they offer me, but I don't place any one over the other, if that makes sense. Right. So, for example, I do have a partner. We've been together for 4 years, and how I might define her, how I define her is like maybe my nesting partner. So she would be, yeah. So she's someone who I would, even though we don't live together right now, she's someone who I would see myself buying a home with, maybe merging finances with, having children with, right? Just having a lot of that overlap. Whereas I might have another partner who I might see as my close partner, still a very significant person, someone who I would love and care about, but I probably wouldn't nest with them per se, right? And then another version of that, or another partner that can play a role in that, could be like a comment partner, which is maybe they're not around as often, maybe not as frequently as the other two partners, but still very much important and loving in their own right. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. What was the last one you named it?
Comet. Comet. You know how you see like comets in the sky, like in the atmosphere?
Yeah.
That they come by every, every so often.
Yeah.
Right? But still live in your heart. You still love them dearly.
Yeah.
And like they're always a part of your heart, but maybe aren't around as frequently as the other two. Yeah.
Yeah. Nesting partner, close partner, comet partner. Yeah. No, it absolutely makes sense. So I mean, in thinking of the smooth and the difficult transition, this sounds like for you, this has been the most smooth.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It makes the most sense for me just because I don't know. I think everybody's human. And so in trying to make any one person more important than the other, and I totally understand when people want to feel important. Absolutely. But I'm not interested in making anyone feel less than either, because in terms of the roles that they play in my life, like they're very, people are fulfilling in my heart, and trying to pass someone off as though they don't matter. Those kind of things get kind of difficult when you're trying to articulate, oh, you're more important than this in this way. And it's like, it's too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in thinking of like your family and friend and support in other way of this part of your identity, how do you feel like folks have been supportive or not?
In terms of support, my parents, so my dad, he's 72, 73, and then my mom's 68. So you can assume that they
very different generations.
very, very different generations. So a part of me initially was like, oh crap, they're not gonna go for this at all. But something that was helpful, I think, was prior to that, they already knew I was queer. growing up, and seeing their response to that, they were very loving. They didn't, no judgments or anything like that. So that helped me be able, kind of tell them and share with them that I was polyamorous. My mom's reaction was very nonchalant. She was just like, I remember we were driving in the car, and she was just like, girl, she was like, everybody practices that. That's always been a thing. She's like, people just don't practice it openly all the time, like in her generation.
Mom.
Yeah, she was she was very straightforward, but she was just like, that's not an uncommon practice. She was like, just in our generation, we just wasn't saying it. That's the only difference. She's like, people was doing it. She's like, so they were going about it unethically. And so I was like, okay, cool. My dad, I remember going to a wedding with my parents. My mom's best friend was getting married, and me and my dad were having a conversation, and my mom's best friend is lesbian. And I remember saying like, oh, Dad, are you going to be okay walking me down the aisle, to go meet another woman, my partner who I would want to get married to. And he made a joke, and he's like, oh, well, knowing you, there's going to be more than one person at the end of that aisle. So as long as everybody treats each other with respect and loves my daughter, I'm fine. So that was a surprising but hilarious reaction from him. In terms of like my siblings, they're supportive. They don't always understand it, but they're totally fine with just who I am as a person. As far as my friends go, Myra's pretty supportive, right? Like she loves me, doesn't care who I date, right?
Right.
So she was like, right, you love me. But on the other hand, I've had some people in my life who are friends who aren't always the most supportive. Like I've had someone say, it was one of my partners, another person connected to one of my partners, where they're just like, oh, I don't agree with this. I don't.
Oh snap.
And not necessarily from a like mean perspective, just like, oh, I just don't like agree with that style of.
For them, or they were saying like in general in the.
So I think mostly for them. I think what their response was. I think something that I've noticed is when something is so new to people, it can elicit a lot of responses, right? Especially if your mind is so concrete around the idea of only one person can be with another person. Sometimes I think it can elicit like fear or just like misunderstanding. And so their reaction is just like, oh my gosh, like more so out of fear of like, oh, I don't want you guys to have a bad relationship or something bad to happen. So that's more so where their reaction came from. So from that perspective, I was like, oh, okay, I see that you love us, and so you're fearful that something bad will happen. But I think over time they're like, oh, y'all got it. Okay, it's totally fine. Nobody's hurt, nobody's harmed. So everybody has been supportive. I think most folks sometimes struggle with being able to understand the dynamic, but they're overall like supportive. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. We're curious how you feel you personally establish boundaries in these relationships and like what that looks like.
Establishing boundaries. Let's see. So in terms of how I've established boundaries before, it's been in a couple different ways. There's a few different styles of polyamory in terms of the way other partners interact with each other, for example. One of those ways is kitchen table poly, right? Have anybody ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. So kitchen table poly is the understanding that all partners and let me back up. I think a better way to define this. So first off, if you have a partner who dates another person, but you're not involved with that other person, right? That is called your metamor, right? So it just means metamor, right? So it just means that two people are dating the same person, but them themselves are not intimately involved. Right? Yeah. So for example, my partner has dated someone before and had but me and him didn't have we didn't have any kind of romantic relationship. So that would be my metamor, right? Some folks practice kitchen table poly, meaning you're okay with everybody interacting and having like friendships and talking and being around each other, which is why people use the term kitchen table poly, like, as though like everybody's hanging out around the table. Whereas some people are like, absolutely not.
You're not coming to my table.
Like not
kitchen table.
Yeah. Like, you will not be at a kitchen table. I can know that you're around and you're out there. You love my partner, but nah, like we're not hanging out. And I've practiced both. As far as boundaries that help me feel good, or my own limits. Sure, my partner can go out and date whoever she wants to date. At some point, it is helpful for me to know like that person right after they figure out their dynamic. I like to be able to meet them, right? For me, in terms of like how that relates to my boundaries, is it kind of demystifies who this person is, right? So I like to be able to know who that person is, maybe chat with them, maybe go out to dinner with them and things of that nature, just to figure out who my partner's involved with, so that there's not this sense of like this mysterious person in the background. Whereas, some other folks don't care to know. I do. So that's one way that I uphold my own limits, my own boundary. Like I do want to know who this person is.
Yeah. Sounds like a strong boundary to have, and like you understanding what works for you.
So I want to make sure I got these notes right, because I want to share with our audience some of the types of poly relationships that we're learning. So we got polyfidelity, we got triad, then we got the terms nesting partner, close partner, then we got kitchen table partner, common partner. Any other ones that just are shooting off the top of your brain? And I also am going to make sure we tell them like it's complex. There are various ways you can do it, but these are some of the things we learned.
Sure. Let me see. Some other terms that are kind of helpful for folks. There is another dynamic that's called parallel polyamory. Parallel means it's not kitchen table, right? So this is the one where not kitchen table. This is when all parties are aware that other relationships are existing. They just choose not to interact. Right? Yeah, they just choose not to. Or at least not as intimately as like a kitchen table poly dynamic. But they're fully aware of like, oh, you're gonna go see your other partner. You guys are going on a date. Cool. See you later. Love you.
Have fun.
Have fun. Have a good time. In terms of like them dapping it up and hanging out all the time, they're like, nah, we don't need to do all that. Like, you're good. And then let's see, there's non-hierarchical. Another term could be like solo polyamory. So this is referring to like a specific individual and how they interact with their multiple partners. So a solo polyamorous person has committed relationships, but they are not so much interested in doing maybe some of the more like, I don't want to say committed, but like standard practices of like partnerships, like moving in and sharing finances and having kids. They're usually a bit more independent. So they're not wanting to do that with other folks as much. They're just like, no, I can have multiple relationships, but I'm not trying to merge those worlds. So they tend to be a little bit more independent and on their own. And then let's see here. Another type of non-monogamy. This is another form of non-monogamy. So it's not necessarily polyamory. Can be, let's see.
Thank you for breaking this down, because you're making me think about, are you familiar with you're not really on TikTok like that, but are you familiar with San Diego Royalty? With Sean San Diego Royalty?
San Diego Royalty. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, San Diego Royalty. So basically what it is it's this guy, his name is Sean. He's in this committed relationship with this woman named Shanice. She goes away on her ship she's in the Navy. She comes back, and basically he's like, I met this woman. I think that you'll really like her. Together, if we are poly, we can build generational wealth. Okay, Shyla. And so as we're seeing it play out, their relationship is kind of the relationship is kind of confusing, because it seems like
we cannot hear her.
Oh, okay. The relationship is kind of confusing because it seems like Shanice doesn't really want to be a part of the relationship, right? So to me, it looks like what you're describing as parallel poly, but it looks like Sean, the main person in all this that's brought everybody together, is trying to mesh them all together, but they're all trying to do different things. So it's interesting hearing you like break these down, because as I'm looking at it, it looks like everyone is in a different type of relationship, but there was no real conversation about what everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward, this has been going on for the past like year. They're really popular on TikTok. Now Shanice has broken off and gone off and done her own thing. And she's basically said, like, if I was gonna do poly, like I wanted to do solo poly, but there was no understanding. Like I tried to have these conversations, but they did not happen. So I say all that to say, what I'm getting from this is conversations have to happen. So that way we understand if we are gonna be poly, how we want to exist in that type of relationship.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's interesting because being in a polyamorous relationship versus, because I've tried monogamy before and definitely communication is important. I would say in polyamory, the level of communication that has to be present is just ongoing, very upfront. So for example, when I'm going on dates with folks, that is literally one of the first things I'm sharing, just so everybody has informed consent of like, do you really want to participate in what it would mean to date me? Right? Just because I'm not trying to surprise anybody down the line, right? So conversation is definitely something that has to be at the forefront, right? And making sure everybody's agreeing to what they're going to be a part of. Yeah, but that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for
if you
that.
if you check them out, you'll fall down like a rabbit hole. Like it's so just.
Are they called the Royals?
The Royals?
No, the San Diego Royalty.
Oh, Royalty. I don't know. Maybe I have come across their stuff, but I'll look.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah.
It's also making me wonder for you, Monica, how when you're in this type of relationship where communication has to be so present, how do you feel like that's impacted your other relationships? Because it makes me think about when you have certain relationships where communication is so at the forefront, it pushes you to feel like, well, for me, like if I'm doing this in one relationship, I have to do this in all relationships. Like communication just has to be a thing, because then it makes me feel like, what are we really doing here in friendships, family, all that?
Yeah. In terms of how no, definitely. I think for my intimate relationships, like romantic partners and things like that, because my communication is so present, I try to let that, kind of flow into my other friendships, family, and just trying to make sure everybody's in the know about what's going on in my life, as much as I can. I feel like because I practice it so much between myself and my partner, it flows pretty naturally. Sometimes in my family, sometimes when I'm trying to be the one that's communicating a lot, my sister's like, oh my goodness, like I don't want to say more in tune, but I'm very much the talker in terms of like everybody's feelings, everybody's thoughts. I'm the feely kind of like therapist person in my family. So communication is definitely important to me, not just in my romantic context, but then also my family, my friendships.
Yeah, thank you for reflecting on that. I'm curious, as we're thinking about just supporting other folks who may be interested in exploring, do you have any like resources or suggestions that you might give them?
Yeah, so let me actually pull this up for a second. So on Instagram, I want to make sure I'm saying her name right. There is a woman, her name is Sanu. And she is polyamorous woman who supports and coaches folks online. So let me see here. Let me make sure I'm spelling her name right. And I can also give you the notes later too. But her name is Sanu. She coaches people online of how to like start integrating into polyamory. Another person, I'm gonna look at his YouTube channel. I like his YouTube channel because it's so not short and to the point, but very concise. His name is polyamfam. As a way to kind of start learning and breaking down the different forms of polyamory, boundaries in polyamory, So those are two people that I enjoy looking at and listening to.
Would you suggest Shan Booty? She doesn't focus on poly, but just like relationship stuff, like as a whole, or is there someone else that you would suggest?
Also, Shan Boodram, I think she's really open in terms of just being open in her own relationship, but also just open to all different styles of relationships. So I think her channel focuses more on like sex. She talks a lot about like sex education and things of that nature. So she's a good resource. Who else am I thinking of? Yeah, those are ones that come to mind right now in terms of like starting off and getting some footing into understanding what polyamory is about. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And then we have the books that you shared too. So I think that putting both of those together would be really helpful.
Yes, absolutely. So at the end of our podcast, we always asked our guests to give a takeaway, and this could be anything you want, anything's on your mind that you want to leave with the audience today. So what would you say?
As a takeaway, just from my own experience in practicing.
Anything that's coming to your mind, even if it's a quote, if it's a person, but anything that comes up for you that you just want to leave the audience with, or even yourself with today.
Yeah, I think for me, something that I've been reflecting on and just like in my journey in general is learning to be authentic and just who you are as a person, right? And like, sure, I'm talking about like polyamory and stuff today, but I think the more honest you are with yourself, the more you attract the people who are going to be a part of your tribe and who love and support you. But you have to first start off by being honest with who you are to yourself.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. Authenticity is trying our best to show up as that way, and you will attract what's supposed to be for you, which kind of goes back to that quote, I guess, a little bit. But we thank you so much for joining us today, answering all of our curious questions. We really appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely. Thank you for having me.